80% of recruitment agencies either get stuck or they fail in their first 2 years or before they even get to 1 or 2 employees because of a handful of things. And I'm going to nail them in this video. I'm going to explain them in as much detail as I possibly can. And this is going to be valuable for anybody who's either thinking about starting a recruitment company, you're in your first couple of years, or you haven't got past 1 or 2 employees. And if you're in that position and you find that if you've started, you're constantly in the grind of working all the time and everything relies completely on you and the work that you put in, then you'll enjoy this video. You'll get some good value out of it. And in case you don't know who I am and you're brand new into this, I've been running my own recruitment business since 2016. And we have grown year on year now with 12 employees, 8 to 12 placements a month. And I don't work full time anymore, basically. So let's dive in. Let's dive in. Now, the first thing, I don't believe this is spoken about enough, and I think this is brushed over, especially in so many places. I've had messages and conversations with so many people who are stuck at this point. The most important thing, by far, a country mile, is to pick the right niche, and to pick a good niche, one where you can thrive in. Now, I've spoken to experienced recruiters, I've spoken to people who are brand new into a niche, and you can take a bad recruiter. You might not actually be that good at recruitment, and you can put yourself in a really, really good niche, and then next thing you know, you're off to the races. Like you can make a lot of money from it just because you are in the right niche. There's enough demand. You're just there at the right place at the right time, and there's measurable things like, are there enough jobs being advertised in the niche? Can you find the clients on LinkedIn? Can you find the candidates on LinkedIn? All of these things, like if you can find them on any platform, to be honest, all of these things play in to finding a really good niche. Now, equally, you can get a recruiter who is really, really good, really, really talented, and they pick the wrong niche. And by wrong niche, all that means is one that isn't so much in demand, or there isn't a growing skill set for it, or you can't find the candidates or clients very easily. And when you're in that situation, you could be an amazing recruiter and nothing goes your way. It still doesn't work for you. And I still believe that finding the wrong niche is by far one of the most important things that you can possibly do, because once you've got yourself a good niche, now it doesn't even matter whether you've got what strategy you use, how you go about finding your clients and candidates, and if you're in that really, really good in-demand niche, now all of a sudden everything works in your favor. Everything works. So that's one part of it. The second thing is sometimes people don't consider cash flow constraints. So if you're starting a recruitment business, especially if you're going into it full time, and you've got a 2 or a 3 month runway, it's a really, really tough run. And I'm saying that from experience because I did exactly that. I literally set myself up for failure. I was working in recruitment at a full-time job. I had enough money for a couple of months worth of runway, and I thought, that's it, I'm just going to go and do this. I know exactly how to do this. Me being experienced in recruitment, I thought, yeah, okay, 2 months, that's all I need. The funny thing is, I actually made my first placement in my first month, first week actually. I found myself an immediately available candidate. I did my best, give my absolute best to go and find the person a new opportunity, and it worked. Amazing. However, I didn't actually make any money for the next 3 months. So if that placement didn't come through, I probably would have been closing down the business because it was such a fine thread. So from here on, you've got two options. One is you can start the business part-time before you actually quit your full-time job, or give yourself about 6 months worth of runway, because it takes about that much time to really get into the rhythm and get into the momentum. Now, if you see some of the people that I've helped, you'll find those videos on my YouTube channel. Some of those people found success within, the quickest one so far is about 70 days, 10k fee within 70 days. And on average, people find it around about the 3 or 4 month mark. And it depends on a few factors: the commitment, the time, the energy, the effort, the consistency in all of the actions. All of this takes a really big playing factor into it. However, it still boils down to cash flow, because if you have yourself a slightly longer runway, then brilliant. You've just got yourself more room to give yourself some breathing space. And if you don't, then you're just going to put yourself under a little bit more pressure than what you need to. And this doesn't just apply. This doesn't just apply now. Now, as in terms of just starting a recruitment company, it also applies a little bit later on down the line. And that is that there will be market fluctuations. There will be that recessions are going to happen. We've worked through 2 of them already. And I'm sure we're going to get through the next one as well. So when you do go through recessions, you have to be able to manage your cash flow, at least have some either cash reserves or be frugal in terms of the way that you manage your expenses, and make sure that you're not spending unnecessarily unless it's an investment to help you make placements quicker and faster. And if that is what you're investing in, well worth it every single time. Never ever has it failed when you invest in helping you either acquire information or get something implemented quicker and faster than what you would do if you were just experimenting on your own. So managing cash flow comes in 2 parts, because one part is right at the beginning in terms of your getting your business off the ground, and the second part is when you get to at least a level of stability, in the sense that you're making regular placements. You need to have enough cash in the bank to make sure that you can ride through any disruptions that might happen in the market. Most of them completely out of your control. And in those situations, you need to be in a good position. So that's one part of it. And the second part is to make sure that you're investing in things that help you make more placements quicker, faster. So that could either improve candidate flow or improve client flow. And all of these things will contribute towards your positive cash flow in the business. Now, another part of it that I think is massively overlooked is overly relying on job boards. Overly relying on job boards and even LinkedIn Recruiter or LinkedIn Recruiter Pro. Now, the reason why I mention these 2 tools, although they're very, very popular in the recruitment space, is that when you consider the entire job market and you consider all the different candidates that are available, who might even be looking for a job right now. Let's just take a niche where there's, say, 10,000 people, 10,000 candidates in a given market. And when there's 10,000 candidates in that one market, you have to accept that at the absolute top end, there's probably 10% of people who are looking for a job right now. That's 1,000. Okay, so from 10,000, 1,000, of which a handful of them are on job boards, a handful of them are going to be on LinkedIn, a handful of them are actually actively looking for a new job. So we're talking the best part of probably 300 or 400 at best. Now, when you work that out in terms of percentages, what's that, 3%, 4%, something like that? When you rely purely on people who have a CV ready and they're ready to go and they're applying or they're frantically looking, there's going to be like probably 1% that are panic applying because maybe they're not that good and they just struggle to get a job. And when you consider these, you're completely narrowing in on your entire market. And for that reason, I no longer endorse or encourage anybody to take out job boards, because I just don't believe there's any point in doing so. You can access 10,000 candidates very quickly these days. Once upon a time, there were very large recruitment companies, and the advantage that they had over some of the smaller ones was that they had a lot of data. They had massive databases of candidates and clients, and it was really difficult for smaller recruitment companies to actually compete with the larger ones because they had access to so much data. However, excuse me. However, now with the use of AI and several automation tools and data scrapers and everything else, you can get access to that data just as quickly, if not faster. Now, the difference is no longer access to the data. The difference is the processing speed, how quickly you can actually make contact with them. So overly relying on job boards and LinkedIn, you limit your capacity for the number of candidates that you can actually get through to. And all that means is that somebody else who has a bigger data pool of candidates, or somebody who has had access to the exact same job board for a longer period of time, they're always going to have more candidates. So you're always going to be like in a rear, like a step below compared to anybody else who has either another tool or they've had access to job boards longer than what you have. So that's another part of it. Another thing is not having, or at least reviewing, your sales process. And I'm talking not just sales process for qualifying clients and bringing them in, but also qualifying your candidates and bringing them in. Now, I give this example for people who have worked with me, and I don't mind sharing it here. When you send a CV, a profile of a candidate, to a client, they should have no questions. That's the approach that we've taken, and it's worked phenomenally. And that is that if you put yourself as a recruiter in a position where you are employed by the hiring manager, okay, let's just say you're second in command to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager has said to you, you need to interview this person, and I want you to get all the information that you possibly can about why they might be a good fit for us and our company, and send it to me in an email. And if you put yourself in that position and in that frame of mind, what you find is that you're checking everything, like where do they live, how long is their commute, how are they going to commute, their job history, why they left all their previous positions, references from all of their hiring managers, the tools, the tactics, the skills, the soft skills, the experiences, the project values. Like there's so much detail that you would go into if you were the person who's genuinely interviewing. Now, if you take the approach that you are employed, which you effectively are, if you are employed by the hiring manager to make sure that this person is the perfect fit for that company, how much detail would you go into? And when you go into that much detail, guess what happens? Now your intake, the quality, the level of quality that you go into to make sure that the candidate is a good fit, you instantly increase the quality of the questions that you're going to ask at the interview stage when you're taking in a candidate. The same applies to a client. Why are they hiring? What's the trigger? What's the reason? Why did the last person leave if it's a replacement? What are the growth plans? What's the company culture like? And you have to understand that this is a two-way thing. You're not just presenting a candidate to a hiring company. It's also the other way around, because the person who's looking for the new opportunity, they could turn around and say no. And in some cases, it might be because you just don't have the information. So by you qualifying a client and bringing them on board, not only does it showcase your skills, but you'd also be able to spot what is going to be a bad client. Happened recently. We were talking amongst a few guys I'm working with, and they said that the client said that they wanted to interview someone. We sent over the terms. We've chased them. It's been a couple of weeks and haven't replied. I'm like, well, then they weren't that serious. They obviously, is it that higher, or is it just that's their recruitment process and it has to go through so many multiple loops? And sometimes asking the right question when you're talking to a client gives away so much information. I can give you my own example of a client who had a really, really bad recruitment process, and they were actively seeking new recruiters to come and supply to them, and they approached us and we had a conversation. And I still remember that one of the questions that this is quite a high profile client as well in our niche, and I still remember one of the questions that we asked is like, what's the biggest challenge when it comes to hiring? Like what do you struggle with the most? And the person in charge said, getting feedback from hiring managers in a timely manner. And I'm like, okay, is that a recent incident, or does it happen all the time? It's like, no, it's been a problem for a couple of years. It's like, And I still remember saying on the call that I'm not sure if this is going to be the right fit, because for us to represent our candidates, we need feedback in a timely manner. And I share that because they said it takes up to 3 weeks on average to get feedback from the hiring manager. And it's like, okay, if we're going to be waiting 3 weeks every single time before we get any kind of feedback from a candidate after they've had an interview, that's going to be a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Like we have to represent the candidate's going to think we're not doing a good job, and then our reputation goes downhill, and it all just spirals completely out of control. So we decided not to work with that client, and that's that part of it. The other part is there's a capacity to what any recruiter, business owner can do on their own. And this really comes to life, especially if you're an experienced recruiter and let's say you're billing 200k, heck man, even $1 million a year, whatever you're doing, okay? If you're billing 200k, when you start your own business, you're going to do less. It's going to happen, 100%. And that's because there are certain skills and qualities that are required to be a business owner, and it's a different set of skills and qualities to be a good recruiter, and a different set of skills and qualities to be a good manager. And when you consider all of these things, okay, to run a successful business beyond 2 or 3 employees, you need all three. You might have one, or you might have two. You might be missing one, and ultimately you have to really take a hard look in the mirror and ask yourself, what is it that I'm missing? Because your past success as a recruiter, or even wherever you are right now, is the highest level of capacity that you can possibly work to. So if you are somebody who is running an independent recruitment business on your own solo, and you are making, let's say, 50k a month, you're doing 500k a year, okay, 600k a year even, and then you're thinking, like, why have I not hit 700? Why have I not hit 800? Well, you're limited by capacity, and there's a few ways that you can increase your capacity. Number one is that you'll speed up the way that you process your information, and this is by automation, AI tools, and so on. And another part is that you start building out a team, because I can do, if you're ignoring the running costs for a moment, if I had a team of 10 recruiters in one niche and one recruiter in another niche, in the exact same niche, even if this one does $1 million a year, I bet those 10 are going to outperform that person, because there's just more recruiters, there's more activity, there's more calls, there's more emails, there's more communication, like there's just more of everything happening. So just ask yourself the question, if there were one thing that I could do that would have a double or a triple in terms of impact on my revenue, what would that be? And at the beginning, it looks like the best route is just keep hiring more and more and more recruiters. There's an organizational structure that comes with building a team as well, and I can also tell you from experience that hiring loads of recruiters is an absolute nightmare. And if you can grow your business without hiring more recruiters, which I can assure you is possible, that would always make more sense than hiring it with recruiters, unless you're planning on building layers of management. That's when things begin to change. So your experience alone does not guarantee you a level of success, and whatever level of success you're achieving is based on the experience and skills that you have at the moment. And if you want to get to a higher level of success, then you have to just take a hard look in the mirror and just say, okay, cool, there's either skills or experience that I'm lacking, and I need to go and acquire them. So you either go and gain the experience, go and get yourself a job and figure out and learn the experience on the job, or you hire somebody who has the skills and the experience and you acquire it from that person. That's just simply put how it all goes. The other part is, people, from my experience, conversations that I've had, sometimes people can be a little bit afraid of specifically the amount of admin work that you can do, the amount of time that you might have to spend tidying up your website. I can tell you it just never happens. The amount of time that you might have to spend in terms of managing people, and sometimes just out of fear of the amount of stuff that they have to do and get it done properly, it can happen. I'll give you my own example. Again, I'm not involved. I'm not involved in the invoicing or the cash collection process in our business, until it gets to a point where if there's a dispute, or somebody's like not paid for, I think it's nearly 70 days or so. When it gets to that point, I'll get a notification. A lot of the time it gets resolved quite quickly. It very rarely goes into a dispute situation, but I'm not involved in that part of the process. And the reason why I'm sharing that is, sometimes it can be overwhelming thinking about how much work goes into the admin aspects of running a recruitment business. It actually isn't that bad. And for that reason, people are prepared to go and give up a percentage share of their business to say, okay, you take 20% and you take care of all the admin. Like, there isn't that much admin that goes into running a recruitment business. It's genuinely a very light operation compared to several other business models. It's probably not the easiest one, but it pays better and it's much more rewarding, and it pays off more in the long run. It's certainly much more sustainable, and it doesn't die out after a couple of years. So given all of these things, sometimes the fear of just compliance and admin and managing all of this stuff just comes into play. I sidetracked a little bit because I was talking about invoicing. We we've completely removed the responsibility of anything to do with invoice chasing from recruiters and even business owners in our company. So I'm not involved in it, neither is my business partner. Now, the reason why I mention that is sometimes the biggest fear when it comes to either hiring or handing off some work to an employee is the possibility of somebody making a mistake. And one of the things that I've had conversations about is, what if they get the invoice wrong? What if they send the number incorrectly? What if they forget to apply VAT or something? Well, that just happened. Okay, recently, one of our assistants, when they're sending an invoice, it was meant to be the invoice plus VAT and the sales tax, and they sent it inclusive of VAT. So we're about 20% off what we should have collected in terms of cash. Happened once since 2016, so nearly 10 years in. It's happened once, and we noticed that there's one other invoice where that same mistake had been made, and that invoice hadn't been sent, so we corrected it, and that was it. And we messaged the client. Got something in my eye. Messaged the client and said, "Hey, we made a mistake on the invoice collection. Can we get this resolved?" And they paid it within minutes. That was it. So most of the time, when you're really fearful of something and you're thinking, oh, is that going to work? Is that going to fail? Is that not going to go to plan? I'm concerned about it. I'm a little bit worried about it. I'm not too sure about this. When you're thinking about all of these things, in reality, like, it just doesn't happen. Hardly ever happens. Like, once in 10 years that's happened, okay? For us anyway. So sometimes removing yourself from a process and just delegating it to somebody else can be a really, really daunting and fearful activity. Actually, it's not that bad. From experience, it is not that bad at all. It seems way more scary than what it actually is, but it's not that bad. Next thing, and this can cause a little bit of overwhelm, is the amount of tech that is available. With the rise of AI and everything else that is available, there is a huge amount of tech tools that you can possibly get into, and it is drowning. It literally can drown you because of, like, how many tools there are. It is just absolutely insane. Okay. However, going back to the example that I gave earlier, good niche, good recruiter, no tech tools, no automation, none of this stuff. You can still make it work. Okay. I could tell you, with it will be so much better and so much more profitable. But even without it, you can make it work. So now, when you're studying or exploring the idea of using certain tech tools, what you find is it's just an endless array of tools that you can possibly use and you can dig into, and you just get lost in the entire process. So finding a combination of tools that works and keeping your entire business streamlined, and not having 35 different tools that you can turn to get one thing done, and then not even using those tools, you just end up wasting money, and you start burning through cash for tools and technology that you don't even use. Like, people use job boards. Like, when I speak to them anyway, people use job boards. They don't even use them properly. That they just don't have the time to be sifting through all of these CVs and filtering them out, and then rechecking them on a daily basis, and then looking at all their alerts of people who have received job. And because you're not even using the full capacity of the job board. And when you consider the amount of work that a job board puts on your plate, it's just not even worth it. It's not even worth it. You're better off like doing like a really old school method of cold calling into somebody's office and seeing if you can catch them off guard and getting their phone number. I used to do that once upon a time, and it was not the most enjoyable, but certainly exhilarating. And yeah, man, you just call in and get people's phone numbers and say, I want to talk to you about something, I've seen your profile, and off you go. Sometimes I give you the number, sometimes I don't. So separate issue in itself. The other thing that I found that causes complete paralysis is thinking through your logo and your branding. Like, go on Canva, there's an AI functionality in there, design me a logo, off you go. Like, nobody cares about your logo. If you look at some of the big companies out there, they don't even have a logo, they just put their company name. It's literally like the few letters of their company name, that's it. Like, look at ours, like, it's just our company name, and we put a globe in there because that's part of the name, and that's it. That's it. Like most companies these days just literally have their name as their banner, or their logo, and that's it. So just it's more analysis paralysis by analysis, more than anything else. Like nobody cares about your logo. Just being, no, nobody knows who you are at this moment in time in the earlier stages. Nobody cares about your logo. Just what they care about is what you can actually do for them, and that's all that matters. And that's that point. The other thing is actually, and I've got one more after this. The other thing is to do with hiring too early, and what that means is you might have some a level of consistency, or you might not have consistency. Either way, very early on you might see some success, and you'll see 1, 2, 3, even 4 placements. You've made 6 placements now in the earlier stages, and you're thinking, you know what, okay, cool, we've done 6 placements, let's go and get somebody else. Not such a great move. I'll explain why. The reason why is that you're to be ready to hire from a cash perspective. If you've got 6 months worth of cash to pay somebody else's salary and cover all their running costs, then from a cash perspective, just that one isolated viewpoint, you're good. Like, you're ready to go. So okay, cool, you've got the cash and you're ready to hire. However, you have to ask yourself the question, is this person set up for success? And that is that when this person turns up, are they going to be doing the same job that I was doing as a business owner? Meaning that I'm going to be resourceful, working slightly longer hours where I need to. I'm going to do all of this work. I'm going to try and make contact with people, and I'm going to go the extra mile, just to get this off the ground and work. And the answer is no, because when you hire an employee, they don't own the business. They're not, their livelihood does not depend on the business, because they are getting a salary, so they are not going to work. I say this as a rule of exception. There are some phenomenal employees out there, and this video isn't about encouraging people just to go start businesses for the sake of starting businesses. I think some people are better off in employment, but there are some very, very good employees out there. Having said that, you have to ask yourself the question. You might have had a previous experience where you've joined a company, received no real training, no real onboarding, the expectations weren't aligned, and you turn up and you just feel lost, and it just didn't work out, and then maybe you even left because you felt like you were lost in the wilderness. Ask yourself the question: is that the opportunity that you're giving to someone? Because if that's the opportunity, that's not an opportunity. That's like you're setting someone else up for failure. So hiring too early, what that means is, do you have absolute conviction and confidence that even if there was an absolute idiot of an employee that you can, and I say this in a respectful way, not talking about any of my employees, they're all fantastic, do you have that level of confidence in your business that any person who comes in here, even if they were stupid, they had to completely screw it up to get this wrong? And if that's the conviction that you have in your business, then you're ready to hire. Okay, before that you are not, because you could build a business built on processes and systems where it harmoniously works, and they all complement and they supplement each other. However, you could also build a business where it's led by people, and that means that everybody comes in with their own ideas, they have their own way of qualifying clients and candidates and speaking to them and negotiating with them and agreeing terms at different rates. And all that happens is you end up building a business that is led by people. So now, as soon as somebody leaves, you're in panic mode because you're thinking, gosh man, I just lost a chunk of my revenue, or there's a critical thing that's happening in the business that now I have to get done, and the onus falls on the owner or the leadership team or the management, however the business is structured. So hiring too early is going to be a problem. Hiring too late is similarly a problem, because you could be ready for growth and you're just stagnating basically. So you end up being the bottleneck in your own business. And the last but not least, don't be afraid to charge more. Whatever you're charging right now, charge more, because and I'm going to explain this here. I still believe that many people looking into recruitment are looking at it as selling a candidate to a client. That is a part of the job. It's not the value proposition of a recruitment business. The value proposition of a recruitment business is this, and that is that any hiring manager out there, if you consider the time input that they have into the company and what they bring in terms of value, even if you're a recruiter. So if you're a recruiter and you generate 300K a year for your business, for the company that you work for, then it is not worth your time to step away from making 300 grand a year and focus on something completely different, which may well be hiring somebody to hiring somebody to work for you underneath you. Okay, I've had a coffee, so like my jokes might be a little bit off, but when I say underneath you, I mean from an organizational structure, and you are not going to be sitting on anyone because that would be horrific. Okay, so somebody to work below you from an organizational structure perspective, when you consider that, it's not worth your time. It's just not worth your time. In fact, I'm going to work this out. So if you're making 300,000 a year, if we divide that by 1,800 total number of hours, that means that you make 166 pounds, dollars, or euros per hour on average for your company. Now, anybody who works in recruitment, you know that it can take 60 hours of work plus to find a suitable candidate for the amount of work that goes into it. Now, if it's going to take 60 hours worth of work, that's just over a week, so a week and a half. If you're going to put in a week and a half worth of work into something completely different, so now that time you're not making 300 grand a year, you basically lose 10 grand out of your revenue. So now if a recruiter comes along and says, hey, I'll find you somebody, just pay me 5 grand, of course it's worth it for you. You make 10 grand, you carry on making 10 grand the way that you do every 60 hours that you typically do, and give that guy or the other person 5 grand, and off you go. So now when you consider it to your own clients, if somebody's earning a salary of 60K a year or 100K a year or even $1 million a year, whatever salary they're earning, they're probably making at least 3 times that for their employer. Okay, and their boss is earning more than that, and they probably have a higher time value compared to that. So now if that person is making let's say 100 grand salary, and they're making 300 or 400 grand a year for their business, if that's what's happening, it's not in their interest to go and change their job from being a worker of whatever kind they are, whatever function they serve, and now apply themselves in recruitment, which is not a skill that they have, not something that they do day in, day out, and upskill themselves while they're doing the job, and do all of the qualification and the calls and the conversations and all of that stuff, just to figure out how to hire somebody which they could have just paid 5, 10, 15, even 20 grand for, and got the job done, and then they would have had somebody in place. So the value proposition for a recruitment agency is not selling the candidate, because when you commoditize the candidate, then yeah, you get beaten down on your price, and people are saying, okay, can you do it for 12%, can you do it for 10%, and they're always trying to get you a little bit lower. However, your value proposition is the soft cost that you would save somebody else, that organization, from doing recruitment themselves, because if they want to hire this person, either they're going to find it or somebody else is going to find it for them, and they're the two options. You're going to find it for them, and it's going to cost them less that you find it for them compared to what they do. Only problem is that recruitment companies, not recruitment companies, well, it can be recruitment companies, if you're not able to express that or explain that to a client in their language and make it make sense to them, then for them, they're just looking at your price and thinking, I'm not paying 15 grand for that, because it doesn't sound like it's worth it. Like, why would you pay 15 grand to get introduced to somebody? Like, it just doesn't make sense. 15, 20, whatever, even 5 grand, it doesn't sound like a good amount, because your value proposition is not the introduction. Your value proposition is the time that you would save them and the interruptions that they would have to endure if they were to stop doing their job and start recruiting for this position instead. That's your value proposition. So if you do that, you are able to charge more. So this is some of the stuff that I go over, and it's one of the reasons why I make all of these YouTube videos, and that is that I want everybody to actually genuinely get some value out of these videos, and if you feel like I'm the right person to help you, then you're welcome to reach out to me, and I can do that. However, getting these things right that I've explained in this video will move mountains in your business. So if you are in the earlier stages, you're thinking about going into it, now you're aware. If you're in the infancy, in the first few months, in some cases you might need to be patient, in some cases you might need to be persistent, but nonetheless, keep going. Be persistent, keep going. And if you are a few years in and you're still, stuck at a revenue ceiling, or if you haven't been able to get past 2 or 3 employees, then you just have to accept that the level of success that you're attaining is as a result of your skills and experience, and you're going to be lacking in either skills or experience in one form or another. And if you do want to get past that and you're serious about it, then go and seek out the advice and help that you might need. That's all for now. I will see you in the next video.